Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Trust you had a great weekend and a rather long one. Christmas Day, Boxing Day. It's very quiet here in Nairobi, as it tends to be, as everyone tends to go out to the coast or back to their home, wherever it may be in the countryside, and everything takes 2 minutes to get to. So Merry Christmas to all of you, and here is to more memories and experiences from the mountains we all love. That's my friend Godfrey Mambo, who loves climbing mountains. Macro thoughts: it can't go to zero. Paste this chart to your wall and look at it every time you have that thought. Market watch. The euro had a flash crash, I think it was on Christmas Day, recovers after tumbling against the dollar over Christmas. We're last trading at 118.83. We've seen these flash crashes on certain platforms in illiquid situations. But according to Reuters, they don't think it ever happened. Cryptocurrencies in December came under some pressure. We then have now bounced back. Bitcoin is at 16,400, for example, but this gives you a better idea of a basket of cryptocurrencies. Home thoughts: this little town is about to be invaded by Nairobians any minute now. That's Mombasa. Photograph is from Sam Dave. This is the interior of the 1957 250 GT Berlinetta. Looks rather great. I'm looking forward to being on the beach. This is the sun setting over the beach near the fort of Sebastião, the oldest standing fort in sub-Saharan Africa in Mozambique. I just like that photograph. 2017 super trades. Look at this: Mozambique new metallic versus Uzbekistani Suma. The new Metical rebounded over 20%. Factor in the positive carry, and you had some pretty stellar returns. Sunrise Saturday from the Santa Ynez Mountains with Santa Cruz Island in the distance, one day after the Thomas fire. That's LC photo. Kind of apocalyptic photography has come out of this California wildfires. Nuclear alien UFO from North Korea. This is Elon Musk, who made a couple of tongue-in-cheek comments about his rocket launch. On any given day, a third to half of the dust drifting through Miami comes not from the local beaches, but from Africa. I've been reading a book about the life of the great desert, the Sahara. And it really is fabulous. And it's talking about how opportunistic pathogens are hitching rides on the dust and the wind. This is Hunter S. Thompson, whom I do admire, as you know. Political reflections: one of our top favourites from 2017. Crowley's audacious inauguration pick went for darkness over intimacy. This is a New York Times photo. Trump fumed in the Oval Office that new arrivals from Haiti all have AIDS and that Nigerians would never go back to their huts once they'd seen America. He can't help himself. Very interesting piece in Newsweek is Donald Trump's dark Russian secret hiding in Deutsche Bank's vaults. It's an in-depth article. It's worth reading in full. It's on Rich Wrap-Ups. 7th of August this year, I said there is a prima facie case here, and it's in plain sight. Saudi Arabia's great makeover can't afford to fail this time. Visitors to Saudi Arabia could be forgiven for thinking the country just got a dynamic, young new king. Images of him holding babies, drinking coffee with soldiers, or meeting the world's most powerful rulers are all over television. On National Day last month, a giant picture of him was projected onto a Riyadh skyscraper. Salman has emerged as the unrivaled leader of the kingdom, now better placed to steer it through a transition no nation in history has managed to pull off, converting a major economy reliant on petrodollars into one that can survive in a post-oil 21st century. The grand remake involves investing in new industries, creating jobs for the young Saudi population. It will all be underpinned by the sale of a stake in oil giant Aramco, which is now facing possible delay in the creation of the world's biggest sovereign wealth fund. Failure to find the right answers risks leaving the kingdom in limbo and absolute monarchy. Find the right answers risks leaving the kingdom in limbo and absolute monarchy with diminishing resources to fund an unsustainable version of state capitalism. Saudis will get more restless, and the economy already ground to a halt could get worse. Some regard the war in Yemen and the showdown with neighbouring Qatar as costly sideshows. All of the regional problems, Qatar, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, are all a distraction. Failing to achieve sustainable development is the real threat. The royal family, meanwhile, has shown few signs it's willing to share the burden. On a visit to Russia this month, King Salman brought 1,500 people, a golden escalator, his own carpets, and booked out 2 luxury Moscow hotels, according to people familiar with details. So, lots of sacrifice. I'm not convinced that there is a proper plan here, and I wrote about this in November 2017 when I said that then 30-year-old Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, arrived on the scene and immediately launched an unwinnable war in Yemen. President Assad, with his Russian, Iranian and Lebanese allies, resisted the regime changes in Syria. IS, which was a Sunni and Saudi blade, has been eviscerated. Iraq, which was once firmly in the Saudi camp, is now aligned with Iran completely. Qatar is lost. And I said Saudi Arabia, its allies, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, are caught in an ever-tightening sheer pincer. The paranoia in the palaces in Saudi Arabia is real and existential. And what is also clear is that Netanyahu, MBZ, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Jared Kushner, and a Trump carte blanche have all leveraged this existential paranoia to effect not a state capture, but a kingdom capture. The Guptas were a precursor for this particular capture. Then I was referring to the fact that, last week, this is in November, after being coached into the early hours by Ivanka Trump's husband, Jared Kushner, MBS launched his Night of the Long Knives, which, according to the veteran journalist Robert Fisk, and I quote, "When Saad Hariri's jet touched down at Riyadh on the evening of 3rd November, the first thing he saw was a group of Saudi policemen surrounding the plane. When they came aboard, they confiscated his mobile phone and those of his bodyguards. Thus was Lebanon's Prime Minister silenced. Hours later, MBS's newly minted Anti-Corruption Commission detained 11 House of Saud princes, 4 current ministers, and dozens of former princes and cabinet secretaries, all charged with corruption. Bank accounts were frozen. I was talking about $1 trillion disgorge, which was a slight exaggeration, but not much. High-profile princely crews jailed at the Riyadh Ritz-Carlton, and the gates are now shut. The phone line is perpetually busy, and you can't book a room until February 1st. I said, in all the history books I've read, it's probably wisest to operate on one front, not 2, and certainly not 3. The desperate impulse to act is also up against a 4-year deadline. The speed of decline in FX reserves produces a 48-month shelf life. I said this is an unprecedented moment in the history of the kingdom, and the most perilous moment for the House of Saud that I can recall. Taking on Iran looks like the straw that will break the camel's back. This photograph, newly arrived Rohingya refugee child, sick father, carried to medical camp. Make our planet great again, says Emmanuel, Macron, and indeed, as I wrote in December, he's given France its mojo back. Interesting piece in Asia Times, Sri Lanka, the latest victim of China's debt trap diplomacy. This month, Sri Lanka, unable to pay the onerous debt China has accumulated, formally handed over its strategically located Hambantota port to the Asian giant. It was a major acquisition for China's Belt and Road Initiative, which President Xi Jinping calls the project of the century, and proof of just how effective China's debt trap diplomacy can be. Unlike IMF and World Bank lending, Chinese loans are collateralized by strategically important natural assets with high long-term value, even if they lack short-term commercial viability. Hambantota, for example, straddles the Indian Ocean trade routes linking Europe, Africa, and the Middle East to Asia. In exchange for financing and building the infrastructure that poorer countries need, China demands favorable access to their natural assets, from mineral resources to ports. To strengthen its position still further, China has encouraged its companies to bid for outright purchase of strategic ports where possible. The Mediterranean port of Piraeus, which a Chinese firm acquired for $436 million from cash-strapped Greece last year, will serve as the BRI's dragon's head in Europe. Just as European imperial powers employed gunboat diplomacy to open new markets and colonial outposts, China uses sovereign debt to bend other states to its will, without having to fire a single shot. Like the opium the British exported to China, the easy loans China offers are addictive, and because China chooses its projects according to their long-term strategic value, they may yield short-term returns that are insufficient for countries to repay their debts. This gives China added leverage, which it can use, say, to force borrowers to swap debt for equity, thereby expanding China's global footprint by trapping a growing number of countries in debt servitude. I wrote about this in a piece called China Rising, and I spoke on the 28th of August about how Sri Lanka, which gorged on Chinese debt, has had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditor. One comment from that Asia Times article is not correct. In that article it says Kenya's crushing debt to China now threatens to turn its busy port of Mombasa, the gateway to East Africa, into another Hambantota. The issue here is, fortunately, Kenya has diversified and has got multiple financing arrangements around that port. It's the railway which is at risk. South China Sea island expansion is discernibly reasonable, says the China Daily. Worrywarts upset themselves by worrying about troubles of their own imagining, and trigger mass hysteria if they find receptive ears for their fears. This is what keeps happening with China's so-called island building in the South China Sea. This time it is a report by the overseas edition of the People's Daily with the remark that the country's permanent land area in the waters has expanded conspicuously after recent reclamation work that seems to have given rise to the heebie-jeebies, and saying that President Trump asserted his country's right to do as it pleased when he said, "We dominate the sky, we dominate the sea, we dominate the land and space," while addressing US troops at Yokota Air Base in Japan. And basically saying that these concerns are overblown. I don't think they are. And I wrote about this as well in that article, China Rising. I called China's parabolic rise as being simply breathtaking. I said, few half-hearted and timid follow-ups. China has established control over the South China Sea. I was also talking about how China was surrounding India. He's back, Julian Assange. He was off Twitter briefly, then he came back. The problem with Assange is he's been terribly linear. I said the two key things when you're doing what Assange does. One is plausible deniability. The second is non-linearity. And certainly they haven't been non-linear enough, but they were a part of keeping the electorate under a constant state of destabilized perception. Turkish forces prevented coup attempt in Qatar by protecting Emir's residence. Read the article, very interesting. The original Long Island iced tea cocktail is supposed to be a blend of gin, tequila, vodka, and white rum, as well as lemon juice and Coca-Cola. This is the company that changed its name from Long Island Iced Tea to Long Island Blockchain, and the stock went at Long Blockchain Corporation, and said it was seeking opportunities in areas such as digital cryptocurrency technology solutions for the global financial markets, and promptly surged the stock at one point up 625%. If you want to know what a bubble is, this is it. Currency markets: euro dollar 118.81, dollar index 93.19, Japanese yen 113.19, Swiss franc 0.9889, the pound 133.84, the Australian dollar 0.7747, Indian rupee 64.135, South Korean won 1074.73, the Rial 331, Egyptian pound 17.832, South African rand above the chunk bullish is at 12.49. Dollar index, last I checked, 93.176. A lot of people are looking for a Q1 2017 dollar redux. I don't think they're going to get that. Euro dollar 118.80. I'm looking for 130 plus actually next year on very strong growth out of Europe. Oil topped $60 on WTI, highest level since 2015. You will recall I was talking it up as high as 64.99, but I think near term it's a little bit overcooked, but it's looking very bullish for now. Gold, let's take a look at that, 1282.49. That's crept higher. I remember watching it touch 1241 and we bounced pretty much in a straight line since I saw it do that. Venezuela's economy shrank a staggering 16.5% last year. It's an experiment, 100 as Thompson variety. Inflation reached 274% in 2016. Russia will develop nuclear power plant project in Sudan. They've been working on this for a while. Have signed an agreement to construct a nuclear power plant in the North African country. Russia's Rosatom said Friday. The agreement was signed by Rosatom's subsidiary Rosatom Overseas and the Sudanese Ministry of Water Resources, Irrigation and Electricity. They're doing some nuclear diplomacy in Africa. Of course, they're trying to persuade South Africa to take that on board as well. ANC in secret talks on early Jacob Zuma exit, the sooner the better, but I think Cyril Ramaphosa will build a case against Baba in the meantime. A member of the executive noted that Ramaphosa would give Zuma a long road to hang himself. Zimbabwe takeover leader Chiwenga has been named Mnangagwa's deputy, so you can see the army are deeply embedded with ZANU-PF. Dear Paul Ekman, I tweeted, what do you make of the micro-expressions in this video of President Zuma? Have a listen, have a look. South Africa's ruling ANC to ask President to step down, we know that. South African all shares up 16.08% this year, not far off a record, and that's after the tremendous tumble that Steinhoff endured. Dollar rand, my target is 12, we're moving towards it. Ice cream for sale at Surfers Corner, Muizenberg, photographed by Barry Christensen. Nigeria all share up 43.34% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index up 52.5% year to date. On 25th December at about 1 in the morning, the residence of President Kabila at Musienene reportedly attacked by an armed group suspected to be Mazembe. And they burnt it down. The pressure's building over there, really is. Kabila, of course, was just 29 years old, a commander in the new Congolese military when he became president. As Mobutu once told the army, you have guns, you don't need a salary. Higher up the chain of command, generals use their power to control local trade, whether it be timber, ivory, minerals, or their own weapons. Kabila's principal obstacle is his own unpopularity. Mobutu enjoyed a cult of personality and knew how to whip up a crowd. Holding a cane and wearing a leopard skin hat, he presented himself as a village chef on a national level, never mind that the hat was made by a Paris couturier. He was said to possess magical powers, such as the ability to hear one's thoughts. Kabila, by contrast, gives off an air of detachment, reinforced by his foreign upbringing, his lack of fluency in Lingala, and persistent rumours of Rwandan ancestry. He rarely speaks in public, and when he does, he sounds like a schoolboy reading a prepared text. At soccer games, tens of thousands of fans have debuted a chant that causes state television to cut the live feed. Kabila, watch out, your mandate is over. Fact of the day, in 1997, China had the same GDP per capita as the Congo. Dan Gertler, an Israeli billionaire who was invested in the DR Congo's mining sector, has been added to a US Treasury's list of individuals under sanction. Take a look at this. Congo President Sassou Nguesso arriving for a national event. Congo Republic signs peace accord with the Ninja rebels. Sudan is set to devalue its currency to 18 Sudanese pounds per dollar in January from the current exchange rate of 6.7. Kenya shilling well behaved at 103.10. Nairobi all share up 28.71% so far this year. Probably close out the year around here. NSE 20 up 16.73% year to date. Deacons has issued a profits warning saying prolonged elections reduce traffic to retail shopping malls. Inflationary pressures due to drought, increased availability of retail space created a situation of market cannibalization. Finally, let me leave you with an image of Rusinga Island, capturing moments from this year's Rusinga Festival, Anthony Nguesso. Thanks again for stopping by.